This is our segment that we call the Taxi Squad. Basically, who are we calling up? Who are we sending down? And who are we holding? Buy, sell, or hold, basically.
Gotcha.
And we've got 5 members of the Taxi Squad, really 4, and then I threw in a wild card here, and really focusing on players who have underperformed so far. Usually on the Taxi Squad, we like to highlight guys who are hot, but I think a month into the season, it's time to look at some guys that I think especially baseball card collectors have had their eyes on for the last few years. So let me throw a few names at you. I'm actually going to start with a guy who was involved in the Matt Olson deal, and that is Cristian Pache, who got off to a nice start with Oakland. Obviously, it's a rough situation in Oakland. I feel terrible for everybody that's dealing with what's going on with the ownership basically just putting up the white flag the day after the lockout. But Poche, a really good young talent, was excited that the A's at least got a guy like him in that deal. Unfortunately, I think he's among the worst in OPS among qualified hitters right now, a 35 weighted runs created plus so far. The last I saw on May 1st, his 2018 First Bowman Chrome base auto, a PSA 10, sold for about $100 on eBay. So are you buying, selling, or holding on Cristian Pache right now?
I would hold. He's the guy that you should just be like checking in on pretty frequently. Look, just if you start to see an improvement in the offensive numbers, I think you can kind of convert that to a buy, but you definitely shouldn't sell because I mean, this guy's calling card, first of all, is he plays like 80 grade defense. And I think he's shown a lot of that in the majors so far. So, you just need you're just like begging him to be like a league average hitter or something like that. So he can put up like 4 and 5 WAR seasons and then, make himself into a big name in Oakland, hopefully. But I would not buy, I would not sell. I would just hold and see what he does.
Yeah, there's been flashes, especially with the glove lately, that the defense is legit. Would like to see the bat come around at the plate. And I guess the only other thing that would give me hesitation is just he's in Oakland, and guys tend to, the moment guys have a good season in Oakland, it's like, well, they got 2 more years of arbitration. Time to sell. It can be a little frustrating as an A's fan, and I know plenty of A's fans who have been very, very frustrated the last few years and clearly are showing it with their attendance right now. I'm excited to see what he could do a full season. The A's are going to give him all the at-bats. I guess that's the other really good part as well. He's going to get plenty of time to perfect things. Moving on to another guy in the AL West. This is a guy that I think I saw was on your players you weren't as hot on going into 2022. Seattle Mariners, Jared Kelenic. The rookies for the Mariners, good for them for saying we're going for it, but we're also going to give our top prospects a chance to prove themselves. Julio Rodriguez, the bat's starting to come around. Julio Rodriguez has also been like one of the most unlucky players, I feel like, in baseball this year. So glad to see his bats coming around. But Kelenic has just gotten off to a dreadful start. Like, he's batting 152, a 316 slugging percentage through 88 plate appearances. And yet his value in the hobby hasn't really budged all that much. It has gone down, but let's see. Recently, a PSA 10 First Bowman Chrome base auto sold for $565 on May 1st. And his cards, we get this information from our friends over at Card Ladder, and his estimated value on there is lower consistently than the actual sale value. So collectors are still high on this guy. And man, we have seen a lot of him now. We saw him in 2021. We're seeing him at the beginning of this year. I'm not ready to totally give up on him, but it also kind of feels like if you do sell on Kelenic at this point, I'm not going to blame you.
Yeah, I would sell. I mean, but I kind of had it like preseason that way, right? Like I just, there have been guys who had career starts similar to his who went on and had good careers, but not a lot of when you're talking about someone who's like a former top 2, top 3 prospect, like you pay such a premium because they're showing up on all those lists and you don't have to be a hobbyist to know that, Jared Kelenic's like a big deal and you should buy one of his cards. But yeah, it's just like the guys who have had similar career starts to him and still had good careers were like Paul Konerko and like Brandon Phillips. Like, they aren't Hall of Famers, And so I would, he's striking out 36% of the time this year. Clearly the leash, yes, the Mariners are going to give their prospects a chance, but clearly for a team being competitive, like the leash is running out on him. Like Kyle Lewis is rehabbing in the minors right now. Like that could be a trip back to AAA for Jared Kelenic if they go with him instead. And I kind of called that preseason. So I'm saying Kelnic's a sell right now. I'm not saying he's a sell forever though. I mean, he still obviously has the pedigree, and so he's one of those guys that you can sell now. He's probably not going to have that great of a year. And then if you just feel better about him at a certain price point, once he's like bottomed out, or if he starts to rally back, yeah, then you can buy into it again. But I would have him listed as a sell right now. And I would have had him listed as a sell a month ago too.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, I was just kind of shocked that the price of his cards has still not completely bottomed out, considering what he's done. And yeah, you mentioned it. Kyle Lewis is a guy that I think is the guy to keep an eye on right now. Obviously, a great 2020 in that short season. Would love to see him turn things around, and I think that's really what's going to push this decision for the Mariners. Obviously, there's just too many bodies in that outfield, so somebody's going to have to get sent down. And right now, it does seem like Kelenic would be the guy to have to get a little extra time in the minor leagues. A guy who got called up on opening day for the Detroit Tigers, Spencer Torkelson. The rookies were the big story in the baseball card world to start the season. The fact that we were getting Torkelson, Bobby Witt, Julio Rodriguez, these like star prospects the last few years, all coming up. Very, very exciting time. Things have settled quite a bit. Rodriguez, as mentioned, kind of turning things around. Bobby Witt, there's some great defensive highlights, but the offense isn't quite there. But Torkelson right now is probably the one struggling the most at the plate. A 167 average, just a 295 slugging percentage for him so far through 91 plate appearances, 2 for his last 23. I still really like him, and maybe for him, part of this is the Tigers, I think, had their sights set to make a huge splash this year, and maybe that was a bit premature. With the Javier Baez deal, Eduardo Rodriguez, I was kind of buying in on the Tigers. I liked what they did this offseason, and I thought like some of the pitching, I thought the pitchers were going to come around, and a guy like Rodriguez, his stats I thought were going to look better at Comerica Park. Clearly hasn't been the case. But Spencer Torkelson, his value is still incredibly high in the baseball card world. Recently, on April 24th, his first Bowman Chrome base auto, a PSA 10, sold for over $1,500.
Wow.
So it doesn't feel like a buy right now, but I'm also not ready to sell this guy.
Yeah, and if you find a card you like, I would lean towards buy because he has the pedigree, and yeah, if you just you've said it yourself, like it just depends on how much the hype has died out from opening day, whether it makes sense to jump on him now or wait. You can probably afford to wait. If we're prioritizing, the guys you just talked about right now, I'd say Julio is top priority. And then I would actually put Torkelson second and Witt third. So that may be, a little bit of a divergence from the crowd right there. And also, just while we're talking Spencer Torkelson, you can't not talk Riley Green because he's tearing it up in AAA right now. And if he gets called up and has like a good first week, like his price is going to probably skyrocket too. So maybe keep an eye on him.
Oh, 100%. Riley Green, I think Torkelson's going to get the headlines because he was the number one pick, and everybody in the hobby was chasing his cards in 2020 Bowman draft. So he was getting all the hobby headlines. But I think that, as we were kind of looking at the prospects going into the season, it felt like Green is the play. His stuff is cheaper than Spencer Torkelson. He's obviously ranked higher on most of the prospect lists. Yeah, it just kind of felt like Riley Green is the guy, and the only thing holding him back was the injury to start the season. So yeah, totally in agreement that I think Riley Green of those Tigers prospects, probably the better play in the baseball card world. Moving on to a guy who's not kind of a veteran guy, the first veteran guy we're going to talk about here. One of the most disappointing starts in baseball has got to be the Boston Red Sox so far. They're in last place behind the Orioles in the AL East right now. Looking real rough right now in Beantown, but Trevor Story was their big contract, their big free agent signing. And you had to imagine that so many big free agent shortstops, one of them was going to fail. I guess I'll throw in Marcus Semien in there as well, even though he's playing second. But I think what's been kind of striking is that none of these big free agent shortstop, or I'd have to rack my brain a little bit, but off the top of my head, I mean, Seager has gone off to a slow start. Simeon, Correa has had some ups and downs, and now Trevor Story, I think probably the most disappointing right now so far. He's among the worst in OPS among qualified hitters, unfortunately. And his cards aren't super expensive. A 170 for a BGS 9.5 first Bowman Chrome auto. So the price point's not super crazy, but I also don't know how much better it gets. Maybe he turns things around in Boston and you do big things on the Red Sox, you're going to gain a lot of attention you weren't going to get in Colorado. I think we've seen like Nolan Arenado in St. Louis, so much more attention, I think, than he had in Colorado. And you've seen, I think, the hobby react swiftly. So where are we at on Trevor's Story right now?
I think if you have a lot of Trevor's Story, maybe he's a hold. Or maybe he's, you know what? I'm going to say sell because it's just, here's the thing about him right now. And I love Trevor's Story. All last season, last season, I was talking about he's going to be such a great signing for whatever team gets him. And the thing that has scared me off, he's not hitting great, obviously, but I'm not actually too concerned about that. I think he can hit just fine this season. It's just the overall value is so dictated by his ability to play a plus shortstop. And now he's like a second baseman for them. And a big reason why he's a second baseman for him is I've seen some like Trevor Story fear mongering about his elbow. Basically, he just doesn't, some of like the velocities on the throws and StatCast, like he just doesn't have the arm strength that he did 2 years ago. And that's, I think, a big reason why he's, mostly second base now, while they still have Bogarts at shortstop, even though, Story at his best is a way better defender at shortstop than Bogarts. So I have legitimate Trevor Story concerns for now. And I certainly wouldn't buy, but I would lean more towards I'm in that sell hold range right now.
Yeah, it feels like the right place to be. And I think even with the lower value for those cards compared to these other guys we're talking about, and I can never, ever get my brain out of how they're going to like the Coors Field effect, especially seeing a lot of games in Coors. Like I can never, ever separate my brain, even though there's been so many times where guys leave Coors Field and they're fine. Like Matt Holliday, I just mentioned Nolan Arenado. These guys do fine. LeMahieu has been great in New York. And yet my brain still can't get past that. And a great place to hit in Fenway Park for Trevor Story. So maybe that does benefit him in the long run. But yeah, there are some defensive issues, I think, going into the rest of his career. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. That Red Sox team it's getting late early for that Red Sox team. And, I think they'll be better, but the Rays and the Blue Jays and the Yankees are going to all still be really good. And I don't really know what Boston, what they can do to kind of counteract that right now. Things are getting a little rough right now for the Red Sox. So one more to throw at you. I always like to throw a wild card at the end.
Sure.
We talked a lot about hitters because this is what baseball cards do. We don't give love to pitchers in the baseball card world. So I'm going to try to give some love to 5 or 4 guys really who are doing it in the desert right now. The Arizona Diamondbacks. The words coming out of my mouth, I still feel like someone's playing a trick on me. Have the second best starter ERA in the major leagues behind the Los Angeles Dodgers entering today. I saw Zach Gallen look great this week, and Merrill Kelly to me is the one that just blows me away what he's done with the Diamondbacks. And you know what? I did not expect, I think that the most surprising for me is the fact that Madison Bumgarner, at least the stats right now are backing it up. I don't know how long that holds up. I've seen him the last few years and he just doesn't have that same, just doesn't have it as much on the mound. The stuff is just not as good as it was. even the last few years with the Giants. Bumgarner is the most expensive guy in terms of trading cards. I think I saw nothing above $150 for Bumgarner right now. Are you buying on any of these guys? Buying, selling, holding on any of these Diamondbacks pitchers right now?
Not buying Bumgarner.
No.
I know. I get that his ERA is 1.5, but there's nothing in his profile that indicates that he has a chance to get anywhere close to that. If there are players you should look at, it's probably Gallen and Kelly. They both look very good, and I should give a shout out to Brent Strom, the former Astros pitching coach, because he's the one who is working the magic over there. And it's very clear that as soon as he gets over there and they have, as you said, one of the best rotations in the league so far, like that is absolutely a credit to him. Gallen is, he's a guy who's probably been on the radar for people before in terms of, just thinking about who's going to be, the great pitchers of the future, who's like a dark horse Cy Young candidate in any given year. Cause he is just, he's massively talented. But Merrill Kelly, I think, just has looked almost every bit as good this season. And also, like, I remember just watching him in spring training, just like, wow, he looks like a completely different pitcher. So, it might just be fun to buy some Merrill Kelly just because it's probably just incredibly cheap. You could, if you're balling on a budget like I usually am, you can probably afford to get whatever the nicest Merrill Kelly card there is out there and just see what happens. So Gallen's great. But I mean, Merrill Kelly would probably be like the most fun you could have in the hobby right now.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, if you buy a Merrill Kelly, I didn't look up exactly what his cards were before we started, but I got to imagine you could get a pretty decent Merrill Kelly for like $20, $30 right now. Hey, if he makes the All-Star team, then probably going to be a nice little profit when the All-Star game comes around in LA.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for checking out this clip of Wax Packs and Warning Tracks, Mojobreak's baseball card podcast. If you want to hear the entire episode, make sure to click that link down below in the description, or better yet, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Just search Mojobreak Sports Card Show. That's Mojobreak Sports Card Show wherever you get podcasts, and you'll get new episodes of Wax Packs and Warning Tracks every Tuesday, plus new episodes of our flagship podcast, The Hype, every Thursday. And of course, make sure to subscribe to Mojobreak Media for more podcasts, more clips, and more original videos right here. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to like the videos, and we will see you next time.